Okay, thank you, Chris. And Chris has to leave, but we also have here today Michelle Levy, and well, I'll introduce her later, but she will be talking about some of the legislation related to voting. All right, Chris, the first question is, we know that 2 counties were hacked by the Russians in 2016 and had to sign NDAs. The other 65 apparently did not. And was Seminole County one of the counties not hacked?
No. No, we were not.
So we were not hacked.
We were not hacked. We were not. So, to be clear, there wasn't a hack. It was phishing emails that were sent to counties that had a certain early voting piece of equipment. In Seminole County, we didn't receive the email because we do not have that equipment. We use a different, we use iPads for our check-ins, which all the election workers absolutely love them. We are one of only 4 counties that uses that system. So we did not even receive the email.
Okay, next question. And this relates to something you discussed a little bit earlier. The new requirement to put email and phone number on the outside of the ballot, are you concerned that that will decrease the number of people who vote by mail?
No, we haven't seen any decrease. I understand the concerns behind it because we brought that up before it ever went out. The legislator made those changes, and we are required by law to do what we are told in the election code. So, you know, I said, hey, I was actually in Tallahassee last week, and I said, well, let's consider, because we have to, so I'm going to explain this really quick. The election code is from chapter 97 to 106, but then there's also a Florida administrative code. So the Florida administrative codes, they interpret the law. Okay, they interpret the law. So not only do we have to follow the law, but we have to follow the specific code. Okay, so when it comes to the issue of the ballot, of the vote by mail envelope, we have to put it on the envelope the way in which the rule says we have to put it on there. We can't substitute language. We can't, you know, make it fit the way we want it to make it fit. We have to do it the way they say, the way it's done in the rule. So my suggestion was, let's put optional, right? Let's put the word optional there. Because as you heard me tell you, it's public record. I told our legislators, our delegation, that I'm telling our voters here in Seminole County to be aware that it's public record. And I understand from a law enforcement perspective the concern. I have explained this to my staff. The more that folks are becoming victims of types of identity theft and frauds, I have worked several cases of fraud. Fraud is just a fancy word for theft. I have been a victim of fraud. I watched $1,000 leave my checking account at Lowe's. So, as more people become victims of identity theft, they're not worried about the supervisor of elections office getting their information because they know we already have it. They're worried about what happens in transit. That's the concern. So I actually met with the postmaster here in Seminole County, and I expressed my concern to him. Now, I don't know if most of you know this, but the postmaster has their own federal law enforcement within their organization. So I'm going to make contact with them because it's a federal offense to do anything malicious with mail. And if I find out that it's happened, I will push it to I will make sure that if it is malicious intent, that it is prosecuted properly. But those are the steps that we've taken because we do have to use the United States Postal Service to have our ballots delivered. And again, it is optional. I'm working with our delegation to put the word optional on there, so maybe that will be a change in the election bill this year.
All right, next question. What are the chances of getting early voting at Seminole State College, and what reasons exist to not have it as an early voting site?
So at the Supervisor of Elections Office, our decisions are data-driven. They're data-driven. So we have to make sure that when we make our decisions for any type of voting site or precinct, that we are making those decisions based on the data. And I immediately assessed this coming into office, and for our early voting, Castleberry is our busiest location. I don't know if any of you have voted at the Castleberry branch, but it's the busiest location. And it gets twice as many votes as any of our other early voting sites. When you plot it on the map, so I have a map of the county, and we look at all of our early voting sites, we need one in the East Altamont area to relieve Castleberry. We have to put one there. So that's the priority, is making sure that we relieve Castleberry and put it where it's the most busiest in the county. That's the data. Putting one on Seminole State, when within Seminole State, because we took a look at it, it's a commuter school, number one. So all the folks that are coming there are driving past early voting sites to get there. Okay. The next thing is, as we took a look at that, we have to remember our early voting site is for everyone. It's for everyone. So how many of our folks that have disabilities are going to want to go to a college campus and not know where the room is going to be and have to walk? You know, if you look at our precincts, most of them are churches. Those churches, they have driveways where you can pull up and offload anyone that has trouble walking. As a matter of fact, we're going to be sending out signs in our precincts this time around to let people know that if you are bringing someone that has a wheelchair or anything like that, that you can bring, because one of the clerks mentioned, let's put some signs up just to let people know that, no, you can come up to the door and drop them off. You don't have to park all the way in the parking lot or even in a handicap spot. You can just come up to the door and drop them off. So we have to make sure that these places are accessible for everyone. And also we have to make sure that there's ample parking, because if I can get you to park, I can get you to vote. Okay? That's a very simple term, but it's true. If I can get you to park, I can get you to vote. Okay?
Is there a plan to have prepaid postage on mail-in ballots?
Very interesting topic. I took a look at that too. At the winter conference, we actually had a group come in and they do a lot of research on mail in particular, and it was very interesting. They said they didn't find that paid postage had an increase in turnout. So as of right now, no, that's an added cost to our budget. And I don't know if you saw the recent last year, the county was, I told them, like, look, we have a 37% increase in our budget, which is normal because the SOE office is a cyclical budget. So we're not like any other government agency. Our budget's going to go up in 2020 because we have more elections, so our costs are more. But next year it will have a severe decrease because we don't have elections. So a lot of the commissioners were new and they didn't understand that. And once I explained that to them, and our increase was actually consistent with our neighboring SOE offices. We all had $1 million increase just because of the new mandates, all the things that we have to do. Our vote by mail, we we pre-ordered those because, we could use them for, whatever, and all. You get a better deal when you buy them bulk. Well, when they changed the vote by mail envelope, those envelopes are no good now. So we had to go and purchase more. So little things like that with our budget, but as of right now, that doesn't increase turnout because vote by mail voters are also some of your most dedicated voters.
All right, the next question Please explain the reason for repayment of fees for felons to have their voting rights restored. To me, this amounts to a poll tax. This is from the questioner. Voters voted on that felons would be allowed to vote, and will they use provisional ballots if nothing else?
So that's a great question. So no one in this room can change the laws the way it is right now, including myself. I have to follow the law, whatever that is. When it comes to the fees, so when the language was placed on the ballot, you only get 75 characters at that time. You only got 75 characters for the language. So I don't know whether or not they use up all their characters or whatever have you. But when it was presented to the voters, that language wasn't in there. So I understand the question. So now a lot of things weren't in there, as a matter of fact. So they said murder and sex offenses. Well, having the background that I do, I asked him, I said, okay, well, what offenses? Because in Florida, we have two types of murder. We have felony murder, and then we have homicide. Felony murder is when somebody, in the commission of committing an enumerating offense, they cause the death of another. Is that included? Did you read that on your ballot? No, you didn't. Sexual offenses. We have actually two Florida state statutes that cover sexual offenses in the state of Florida. Chapter 794, which is sexual battery, commonly referred to as rape. And then you have lewd and lascivious acts, which is chapter 8800. Was that on the ballot? No. So a ton of confusion was created out of that language. So now the restored felon is like, okay, well, I have this charge. Do I qualify? This is even before we get to the fees. Or do I not? So I saw a lot of this confusion happen. The fees, that was something that you have to talk to your legislator about that. That doesn't have anything to do with the SOEs. That was placed in Bill 7066. And that was done because we went to the legislator and said, look, we need you to clarify the requirements because it's a lot of confusion. I will tell you, I had a person come into the lobby and they came and they wanted to register, and our policy is and it still is we are accepting all applications. We're not turning anyone away. But they wanted to know whether or not they qualify. And we told them, like, we don't have any access to any of that stuff. That's not what we do. And we said, at the time, this was before Bill 7066 was passed, we said, well, you just got to contact the clemency board, because that was the only avenue at the time. Well, they never left the lobby. They actually called the clemency board because we gave them the information. They called the clemency board, and what do you think the clemency board told them to do? I didn't appreciate that because, I don't like people being confused about something that's very simple, and that's voting. Shouldn't be confused. So I was very happy to sit on the Restoration of Rights Board. My purpose for being on there was to offer my experience from a law enforcement perspective on how we could implement what was required of us and limit the amount of confusion that some of the legislators just did not anticipate or understood.
Okay, now, we're not going to get to all of your questions, but I've talked to Morgan Fess is here, and she's his PR person.
Yes.
So we will get the questions to the office. And
I got time for a couple more.
So here's the next one. A federal judge struck down the Florida law that placed the governor's party first on ballots. How will you determine placement on ballots alphabetically, draw lots, etc., and for which races?
So, welcome to SOE Live. There's a lot of lawsuits going on right now. The simple answer is this: follow the law. That's it. Follow the law. When it comes to the arrangement on the ballot, that's actually Administrative Rule 2.032. ballot design. Ballot design says that your font can't be any smaller than 10, no more than 12, that the title has to be no more than 14, it has to be this type of font, that you have to position the directions here. How many of you knew that? That's how specific administrative rules are. We don't get to just make them up. You know, we did the Elections Academy, which was the first of its kind throughout the state. And that was a way of bringing concerned voters in that just wanted to know about the elections process above all the hype that they were hearing. And you know, we had a concerned voter in there that said, asked this very question. Well, why are Republican candidates above Democrat candidates? I don't understand that. And I said, well, why do you think that is? And she said, well, it's your decision. You did that. I said, okay. I appreciated her telling me that. I appreciated her being there. Because when we showed the class the administrative rule, they had no idea that the SOE has there's no gray area. You have to put it together the way the rule says. And if we all remember, Broward County decided not to do that. So we had an SOE that went off the rail, and you see what happens. And it affects the voter. You have to follow the law. That's the way the law read. And she was like, I didn't know that. That was one of the many things we were able to address in the academy.
Okay, here's an easy yes/no. Someone wants to know if Mike Hertel is still consulting.
No, that ended a very long time ago.
Why are early voting days limited to 1 week for the primaries, and the hours are from 10 to 6, I believe you said, when the state allows them to be 12 hours?
So the state gives us they give us a window. They give us a window. Every county good. So let's use Orange County and Seminole County, right? So Orange County is going to be open all 14 days, all 12 hours. They have 836,000 registered voters. They have to be. Costs $1,000 a day to open and run an early voting site. We have about 318,000, but essentially in your primary elections, a third of your population is not even eligible to vote. So we can get through our population in 8 days with more than enough time. Election workers will tell you there's usually a lot of downtime inside the precinct because it's just, it's plenty enough time. And also, we have 1,000 election workers. Most are retired. What if we asked them to work all 14 days for all 3 elections? The benefit that we have in Seminole County is that most of our election workers return. And the reason why is because we're not burning them out. Seriously, we're not burning them out. They're going to come back because, look, we're going to be open all 14 days, all 12 hours for the general election, right? But that's a long day. And it's not just 8 hours for them. They're there at least an hour before. They're there at least an hour afterwards. It's a long day. They appreciate not having to do that for all 3 elections. And we get them to return. I have election workers that have been serving since President Reagan was in office. I will tell you, my counterparts in other counties do not benefit from that. Orange County, my brother Bill, Universal Studios opened in a new park. That's 1,500 new jobs. The census is taking place this year. Disney's going to open up a new park. He has to compete with so many different things in his county that Seminole doesn't have to, or Brevard or Osceola. So when you think about each county has its own issues that it has to address and deal with. So things are a little bit different based on those situations.
Okay, this I'm told is your last question.
Yes.
There was a recent story in the Sentinel about deleting inactive voters from the rolls. How many voters have been deleted from Seminole rolls?
That article didn't pertain to us. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how many folks have been deleted from the roll. I can tell you since February 18th, or since, so 90 days out. We do list maintenance all year. But we have to stop 90 days out. We stop 90 days out because we don't want to arbitrarily remove anybody from the roll. But anytime someone's removed from the roll, it doesn't just happen overnight. There's a due process that has to take place. So we have to send out a letter that's certified. They have at least 30 days to respond back. They can schedule a hearing with the supervisor of elections. So it doesn't just happen overnight. We don't arbitrarily remove anyone off of the rolls, but that article didn't apply to Seminole County. We had one person who raised their hand for a question.
I'm sorry, I just,
Sure.
I live in Sanford, very close to the supervisor's office, and I work, and I like to vote early. And I feel like having the voter hours start at 10 in the morning for early voting. I understand that the workers may be retirees, but the people who are coming in to vote, which is the purpose of voting early, is to allow people to vote before they go to work and after they come home. And I myself was turned away because I went in to vote at like 8 o'clock in the morning on my way to work. And they said, no, I'm sorry, you'll have to come back at 10. And I said, at 10, I'll be at work, like a lot of people are. So I appreciate you considering the workers, but to me, it's more important to consider the voters who are trying to get to the polls, and many of them need to be able to come early. So I don't know if you can think about doing split shifts if you're concerned about keeping it to 8 hours. Some people work from 7 to 12 and then we open them again for the afternoon, because I would suspect that a lot of your down hours are in that middle time period. So to me, it just defeats the purpose to not have them open early in the morning and later in the evening.
Understood. Yeah, no, that's a great point. So we can't do split shifts because it's illegal. Can't do that. Once you enter a precinct, you cannot leave. Okay, so we can't do that. However, I will say that our hours are based on our turnout. So for folks that have an issue with voting, getting to the precinct, we always suggest vote by mail. We'll send you the ballot to your house.
I should be able to choose the way I want
Sure,
to vote.
absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So I'm just saying, I am a very strong advocate of making it easy as possible. And I did go back another day when I was able to vote, but a lot of people are not able to, when they get turned away, turn around and go back to work on that day. I'm just saying, I think it should be considered
Absolutely.
for the hours to be a little more reasonable for early voting now.
I would definitely consider that. Definitely.
Okay.
And don't forget, our first early voting day is on Saturday.
But there's only one.
So you can come in on the weekend and vote.
Okay, and also we'll have cards out front with contact information.
Absolutely.
So please join me in thanking Chris for taking time out of his busy day